nurse. And, you develop your own brand, you develop your own, kind of identity and reputation. And so, cultivating good mentors is another way to do that.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Welcome back to another episode of today's Medical Sales Leader. I'm your hostess, Claire Davis, and today I have someone very exceptionally interesting with me today, someone who really is the combo of the clinical side and the strategy side and the entrepreneur side. So it's none other than Spencer Jones, and today I am absolutely thrilled to have him joining me. So thanks for joining me today, Spencer.
Well, thanks for having me on here, Claire. I'm thrilled and honored.
Awesome. So let me introduce you really quick, and then we're going to get into the tough stuff because I know that you have a ton to offer this space, and I cannot wait to dig into that with you. So if you haven't met Spencer yet, after working as a nurse, he became frustrated with the inefficiencies that he experienced and was determined to improve the delivery of healthcare, which I think we can all relate to, especially today. And in 2014, he won the ARC Challenge Business Accelerator with his patent dual lumen peripheral IV. I want to make sure I get this exactly right. It's called the BVAD. Is that what you call it? BVAD?
That's right.
Okay.
BVAD. Yeah.
And it focuses on painless and uncontaminated blood draws. So in 2015, he patented his second device, Safe Break Vascular, which I think I just saw you post about just the other day. And he then founded Lineus Medical, where he successfully ushered Safe Break through de novo clearance, well done, as well as the FDA, double win. And Spencer is currently the CTO and VP of sales at Lapovations, a laparoscopic surgical device company. And in his spare time, he consults for life science startups in the orthopedic space. So he enjoys mentoring early stage ventures and playing golf when he can. So, I mean, if that's not enough, what don't you do, Spencer? Maybe we need to have a show on that, but I'm absolutely thrilled to have you here because one thing that stood out to me was when it comes to healthcare and the real innovation that is here. I'm inspired by people like you who have a clinical background and the entrepreneur background and know how to leverage it to not just make great products, but make great things happen with those products. So can you share a little bit about what kind of perspective you're able to bring to this industry because of your background as a nurse? So you've got the clinical and entrepreneurship.
Yeah. And that was a great question. Being a nurse shaped pretty much everything. And I still reference my nursing knowledge in virtually everything I do, from product development to sales to marketing. I never had the itch to do entrepreneurship or med device innovation at all. I thought I was going to do anesthesia. It's what my dad did. I thought I was going to follow in his footsteps. But I've said this before. I think nurses, particularly have a really good skill set that is, largely adaptable for entrepreneurship and innovation. They have to think on their feet. They're constantly solving problems. They have to work across interdisciplinary teams with respiratory techs and physicians, and you name it. But I think, to be a good nurse, you really have to have an understanding of anatomy and physiology, pharmacology, pharmacokinetics. You have to know how to use these devices, and even stuff that you're not tasked with, necessarily doing yourself. You still have to have a really good understanding of. And so I think all of those things gave me a really, really good foundation, to step into a med device world. And, all the clinical stuff, to me is easy. And I did have those a steep learning curve, learning the business development, the finance, and, the accounting and all that stuff that goes along with innovation and entrepreneurship. But I'd say in short, my clinical background as a nurse gave me that foundation of, understanding all the different kind of healthcare delivery, rehab, inpatient, outpatient surgery, all of those different care areas, as well as kind of the anatomy and the pharmacology and the device knowledge that you just have to know as a nurse.
And I feel like the nurses I know and have met and, have been fortunate enough to even receive care from, they tend to see the details that other people miss because there's the greater goal and the protocol, but the nursing staff are the ones who are getting the real-time data and then leveraging what they find and often uncovering those things that other people aren't necessarily seeing because they're not quite so close. So I'm so grateful that people like you are involved at the ground floor with products like these, because I know that you're thinking of it as such a to such an in-depth detail. And it's really
Yeah.
exciting to see that. When did you first think, I want to take my clinical acumen and pair it with sales and business development and create something, or I saw that you're involved in some of those kind of like innovation roundtable groups. So when did it shift for you? And you're like, sorry, Dad, I'm not going to do anesthesia. I think I've got this other path.
Yeah, no, I mean, it didn't happen kind of all at once, really. I started to kind of tinker around and, draw things out and talk to some people way smarter than me and get some good advice from them. And, I was, had completed the ARC Challenge Accelerator in 2014 and was still working full time as a registered nurse doing the night shift on a med surg floor. And, I did not have a trust fund and was not like independently wealthy. I was 24. And at the time, nurses back then, I think I started out around $20 an hour. And so like, I couldn't quit my job. Right. And even after I'd gotten some of that seed capital from the accelerator, I was not ready to take that leap yet. I'm pretty risk averse in a lot of ways. And so once I got into that next accelerator called 0 to 510, that was, May of 2015, they told me and that was 50K of initial capital, right? So there was that a little bit of that safety blanket. I knew some of that would be able to go to supporting me, via salary. But they told me that I had to move to Memphis full time for 3.5 months to do that program. And so that was kind of the, what, or get off the pot moment, right? I remember when that accelerator program was over, I was like, the knowledge I have now, I'm dangerous. I realized kind of like, having that clinical skill set and then learning all the stuff about innovation and entrepreneurship that I did, that I kind of held a really unique set of skills, right? You don't have to be the best at any one thing, but if you're really, really good at a unique combination of those, you can be a pretty versatile athlete in terms of a, business or innovation professional. So that was, end of 2015, after that accelerator, that's when I said, okay, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, I think.
Yeah. No kidding. I mean, you're on fire with it then. So, you mentioned mentors. Who were some of the formative people who you met maybe early on that got you really interested in continuing to pursue it? Because in my experience, it's not just being exposed to this kind of business accelerator. It's like getting in with that circle of people who are just as passionate as you are.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a great question. There is there's so many. I'll say, everybody at the Venture Center, Innovate Arkansas, Mike Smith, Ted Dickey, those are the entrepreneurial support organizations around Arkansas, Startup Junkie, Jeff Amarine, the entire team there. They were really instrumental in kind of that initial, like, hey, you have something here. We believe in this. You should keep running with it, right? Because people having that confidence in you, and not blind confidence, right? They need to tell you, hey, you should shut this down. But them having that confidence in me was huge. When I went to Memphis, though, James Bell, Alan Daisley, they were running the program. Jordan Mickleby, he was one of my first hires, engineer, believed in me. It was huge to have somebody kind of alongside me doing it. Matt Cox on the IP, Liz Soleil, kind of taught me the legal ropes a bit. Jamie Fugit, who was my counsel initially. And then honestly, on, kind of a whole host, like too many people to count from that point on. But, and Dawn Norman with regulatory, she's a partner at MRC Global. But it was just this cast of characters that I could lean on for whether it was regulatory, IP, biz dev, legal, and just having those people kind of in my wings early on was huge.
Kind of down the same vein of mentorship. I think that nowadays, people have come around to the idea that if you want to grow, and specifically in this arena, mentorship isn't necessarily new, but if you want to see faster results, it is necessary. So can you give us advice or even a story on maybe how you connected with a mentor? Because I think that there are a lot of people who think, that's a great idea, I would love to get a mentor, but might not necessarily have a game plan. So what's something you might share with a budding, regional manager, or maybe someone who's got aspirations to go into commercialization eventually, and developing those mentor relationships?
Yeah, no, it's not something that seems super straightforward when you're looking at it from the outside.
Mhm.
Those entrepreneurial support organizations that I mentioned, every state and every locality has their version and their flavor of those groups. So if you're looking for a mentor, I would definitely contact one of those groups. If you're still striking out, you can't find them. Your state's economic development commission, someone from that office should be able to point you in the right direction, or potentially your chamber of commerce from your city or your region. But that's a good avenue to connect with them. I also say, don't be afraid to reach out to someone on LinkedIn, and say,
Mhm.
hey, I'm really interested in this. I just love to pick your brain. Do you have 15 minutes? Right. That's always, you'd be surprised at how many people, will take that call and respond to you. Accelerator programs are another one. Anytime you can find a group doing office hours, which for those kind of not in the space, like an office hour is just, they'll have an attorney come to a lunch for an hour and a half and people get 5 to 15 minutes with them. And it's kind of like free, free advice, free guidance. So those are
Yeah.
always great too. But I think just getting plugged in is really key when you're trying to get into, any career shift or pivot or getting into entrepreneurship or innovation. Like you really have to get plugged in with the right groups, and then they can be that conduit, that connective tissue between you and a mentor. And I'd say too, uh, information is so democratized these days. I could see some people saying, well, I can just ask ChatGPT and then it'll give me any guidance or advice. And I love ChatGPT and I use it. So this is not a knock on ChatGPT,
Sure.
but as you'll understand, and whether it's commercialization and finding the right contract manufacturer, or hiring the right salesperson, or raising capital, or sales in general, relationships are everything. And it's so
Mhm.
important to develop and foster those good relationships. And you develop your own brand, you develop your own kind of identity and reputation. And so cultivating good mentors is another way to do that.
Hmm. I like how, among other areas, you've really developed this sort of brand niche for helping, especially in life science and also in the ortho space. So I'm sure after having consulted this many companies and worked through this many products, there are probably some patterns that you see with early venture startups and innovators who are just trying to figure out how to take their great idea from their mind to the team to the market. So, what
Hmm.
are some of the things that you often find your clients asking for? Like, what are some of the common questions that you're presented with over the years that you've noticed?
Yeah, I'm trying to think because there's a lot of bad questions you're presented
Sure.
with, or no, the a lot of I'll kind of start with a lot of the questions that I get that I wish I didn't get.
Mm,
You know, there'll be a lot of people that you'll say, what do you have? Like you'll just have a call with them and you're just trying to get check the temperature on where they are as a business, where they are as a venture. You'll say, hey, all right, do you have a pitch deck? Do you have a business plan? Have you done any surveys with customers? Have you done any research on, how much the competitive thing is going for, or how much they're paying to
mhm,
solve this problem currently? And they'll say, no, but I just want you to help me find someone to make this. Right. And it's like, that is not the approach to take. You could make prototypes and stuff till you're blue in the face. But if
mhm,
you can't prove clinical superiority, if you don't know, if it can't be priced effectively, if you don't understand the reimbursement environment, if you haven't talked to your customers, the end users, and intimately understood the problem that you're trying to solve from their point of view, not your point of view, then how do you even know what you're going to be building is the right thing, right? How do you know
mhm,
the price you can build it at is going to be viable in the marketplace? So, people will come and say, how do I build this? Can you help me build this? Or find a contract manufacturer. And I just want to take like 9 steps back and be like, look, you need to do a lot more research, a lot more interviews. But that's usually a question that I get, and then I'll ask them the questions of, have you done all these things?
Yeah.
I would say too, for, another question I feel like is more common these days is around fundraising. And the capital markets have changed a ton. 8 years ago, 7 years ago, you could, investors were, trying to win you over, right? And now they're incredibly, close to the chest with their capital. They're trying to preserve dry powder for their existing portfolio companies that may be struggling, and it's a lot harder to get them to depart from their capital. So I've seen a lot of startups that are looking to finish off rounds, or having trouble starting rounds, or looking for kind of bridge funding or those types of things. So that's one of the common questions, kind of questions or concerns that I'm getting these days.
Is there a different strategy that you take now that maybe you wouldn't have recommended 3-4 years ago because of the market and what people are willing to invest now?
Yeah, absolutely. I don't think it's like a paradigm shift or anything, but I think there are things you can do on the margins. I think, you can raise funds whenever you want, right? But I think the amount of traction you should expect that they want should be up, right? You should increase. They're going to want to see more traction earlier, right? Valuations have been depressed a little bit, so don't think you're going to go out there and raise 50 million, or raise $10 million at a 250 million valuation. It's not going to happen, right? So valuations have been depressed a bit. I saw a report that it was about, I think it was 9 or 10% of convertible note deals in the past year, or the past couple of quarters, had at least 1.2 or 1.5 liquidation preferences, right? So those are things that you didn't see in deals 6-7 years ago. So I think you can make sure you have a conservative valuation. Make sure you're coming to the table with a lot more clinical validation, whether it's cadaver lab work, customer traction, customer commitments. That's a big one. If you can get that, pilot users, trial users. But then on the term sheet side, you may have to do some things like liquidation preferences, different discount rates. Instead of a 15 or 20%, you may have to give them a 25% discount rate, right, on a convertible note. So there's just a lot of levers that you used to not have to pull, but I think today it's becoming more and more common for you to have to go and pull those levers to attract and kind of get an investor over the finish line.
You bring up such a great point. And the reverse engineering that you're talking about, from what we're finding out as far as the utility and the real interest that there would be in the market, is so important. I was just talking with a gentleman in commercialization the other day, and he called it the pain quotient. Is there a big enough pain quotient that would really dictate that there's a real need for something like this in the market? And often, like we all do, and we think our ideas are really wonderful, sometimes because we're so excited about them, we expect others to also be just as excited.
Yeah.
And I hear that it's common that we can sort of forget to do that initial research to find that pain quotient, or to, like you said, see if there's really enough interest out there. Do you find that's a common thing with products that tend to not maybe get off the ground?
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. I mean, and you're as a founder or the creator of something, you have a vested interest in believing it will succeed and believing it's a huge problem. So I think people really do a disservice when they don't go out and try to figure out what that pain quotient is from the customer's mouth and from the end user's mouth. And something that I'm saying to that kind of speaks to that pain quotient, something can be an absolute bear for a surgeon or a nurse to deal with, right? And you have a solution that makes that problem a little bit better, or a lot better even, right? And it also may be better for the patient. And you look at this and say, this is better for the patient. This is better for the surgeon. It's not even super expensive. Why wouldn't anyone use this, right? Everyone should love this, right? And I think those people, and it's such an opaque, murky side of the healthcare industry, but how things are financed, insurance coverage, and how things are reimbursed, and the profit margins at this facility versus that facility, and the contracted purchasing landscape, whether it's bundled agreements with large OEMs or GPO contracts, or run down the list on all of those kind of finance side that have nothing to do with putting hands on patient, right? I've said this, and I think Dr. Ammerman, he's a neurosurgeon out of DC, big shout out to him that I work with. It is not, I think he coined this, it is not just good enough these days to be clinically superior. You have to be clinically superior, and you have to provide a direct cost advantage, or at a minimum cost parity for the hospital, right? Because if you truly have something innovative, what that means is they're not currently solving your problem. So what you're going to bring to them is likely just an added cost, right?
Yeah.
And they're not going to do that in this environment unless you have, a cure for a disease that's not being cured, or something that's, truly groundbreaking. But, I just, hospitals, it's hard to get them to pay serious money for incremental improvements to things that they're not already solving, and things that are not going to directly impact their bottom line. When I say direct, I don't mean there's this benefit because this thing might happen or might happen less, and down the road you'll save money. I'm talking like, you were buying this, now you're buying mine, and it's cheaper or the same price, and you're getting all this clinical value. That's what they want to see these days, it seems like.
Yeah. Okay. So from your perspective, I would love to know, obviously there's a lot of contracts and a lot of hospitals that will take on the laundry list from one company, and they will slightly innovate new products that are necessary. So essentially they're buying from one vendor, right? So like say a Medtronic or something. Do you think that it would be better or worse for a hospital to be more contract driven with one vendor, or that it would be better to have multiple vendors with different competitive products to drive maybe innovation and efficiency? Or maybe is it the other way around? It's better to innovate and be efficient with one company at a time. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a really good question. There is a lot of that, I'll call it kind of bundled price breaks and rebates that you're able to get, and elevation of tiers because you're spending so much. There's a ton of that happens. I would say it's probably specific to like a certain department, because, and I'm just to use an example, or hypothetically here, but Medtronic may have great plates and screws, but their biologics aren't what you want. You want another company's biologics, and so on and so forth. I mean, I think in general, from like an antitrust perspective, like the more competition you have, the better it's going to be in terms of getting the best products possible and getting them at the right price, right? So anything, I would lean towards more innovation, more diversification of your, supply chain, if you will, or your vendors that you're working with. Most all of these vendors are going to be distributing their product through a Cardinal or a Medline or a McKesson. So at the end of the day, you're still going to be getting that one shipment, or, however often you get that shipment from the Medline truck or whatever. So it doesn't really mess up your logistics side of the supply chain as much, but from a, how many vendors, different products are we using? I would lean towards more competition, because you're going to be getting a kind of a broader, more diverse set of products. And when new innovative things pop up that can really help your patients or save you money, you're not contractually bound by some non-clinical reason to stick with one of those companies, right?
Interesting. Thank you so much for sharing that. I've so enjoyed following you on LinkedIn, which is where we met, everybody. So please do, just like we're sharing here today. Spencer's right. Even reaching out on LinkedIn can make a huge difference in the people and the quality of relationships that you build, where you want to get visible and where you want to learn and grow. And one thing I've learned from you is certainly passion for the product. My goodness, the stuff that you guys are creating, it's just phenomenal, especially where pediatrics are concerned. And it's really incredible to see. And so just today, even, gosh, we've been talking 30 minutes. A couple things I've taken away from this conversation today are that it is an incredible asset to have somebody with clinical experience on the ground floor guiding the business processes and the idea generation of new products like these. So yeah, I was just chatting with a gentleman the other day, and he said, yeah, we've got a really great product, but it's incredibly difficult for the nurses to deploy. So while the physicians may love it, actually getting it to happen in that OR suite is a real problem, and it won't fly. So having somebody like you on the team is absolutely essential. And I love that. The other thing that you mentioned that I think is really interesting is that, you don't have to know everything. It's not like you wake up one day and suddenly you're ready to guide a startup. Right. But if you have passion, reach out to those mentors and start developing those relationships and learn that business acumen where you want to be powerful in your field. And then finally, having that clear differentiator advantage. That's what's going to make products and people stand apart. And I think that, this is really powerful stuff right here. So if somebody wants to connect with you and learn more, maybe, chat with you about what you've got going on and what your products are all about and hear your story, where should they connect with you?
Yeah. So I try to be pretty good about checking my messages on LinkedIn. So it's Spencer Jones on LinkedIn. I'm the one that's working for Lapidations. I'm the only Spencer at our company that I know of. So just you can message me on LinkedIn. I actually really enjoy getting to connect with people. If anything we talked about today resonated with you, just shoot me a message on LinkedIn. And whether you just want to say you enjoyed the podcast or you want to connect, for a quick phone call or something, or a Zoom, would love to connect with you. And I appreciate you listening all the way through this awesome podcast. I know I had fun, and Claire, I just really appreciative that you had me on.
Oh, I'm so grateful. I've admired you for a while. You're exactly who I knew you'd be from getting to know you through your content. So I appreciate you and your candor and everything you've shared. And, if you guys want to have round two also with Spencer, I'll put you on the spot. And maybe we'll continue this conversation in the future, but I can't thank you enough for really highlighting some of these things today. I know a lot of people in the clinical space, in the medical sales space, have entrepreneurial aspirations. So follow Spencer, check out what he's going on, and connect with him. You can't go wrong. And thank you so much for your time today. And thanks everybody here for joining. If you're here and listening, it's because you want to learn and grow in your craft. And we're grateful for each one of you for tuning in. So thank you so much for joining us today, Spencer.
Thank you. Take care.
All right, you too. Until next time, thanks everyone for joining, and we'll see you then.